Good evening. Thank you for joining me. Wow, we've got quite a few people already. So welcome to my YouTube channel, Harry Tangye. It might be Farms and Fatals. I might spend quite a long time deciding what it's going to be. Either one of those two. I could flick a coin, it'd be much better. But welcome. Really glad to see you here. Thank you so much for joining me. And it was just one of those subjects that people ask a lot of questions on. I write a little bit about it in my book, Farms and Fatals. And it's people are inquisitive. What do you actually do? So if you're joining the police, you've just joined the police. If you just retired from the police many years ago and you just want to see if things have changed very much or whatever, this is what it's about. And if you're just generally interested, you just want to know when those roads are closed for 6 hours, 8 hours, what the hell are they doing? So maybe Jeremy Clarkson will be listening to this. You never know. There was something I explained on Jeremy Vine on his radio show one time because Jeremy Clarkson put that thing out, what is happening. But I want to take you back earlier. And it's really about the human side of things, about policing, what makes a police officer do that. What do they physically do? And what are they thinking of? And what do they do at the scenes when they get that call? So here we go. Let's see how this goes, shall we? It is live. So please, by all means, ask questions and whatever. And hello, Eve. Eve is with us. Nice to see you. Thank you. So I think we'll just crack on, really. It's the collisions that we're looking at, really. Many scenes that we deal with, isn't it? Okay, so look at it. You've got this sort of scene. I remember this. All these photographs are mine. I attended this scene. It was absolutely chaos because one car actually you can see the solid white line there. So no overtaking opportunity, and it just drifted across. And there was good video camera, dash cam footage to show that what that car actually did. And it just clipped another one that span another one straight into a van, one right over a little ravine there. Absolute chaos. A fair few injuries, not fatal, I have to say. And it's usually, I've found, really is with the more devastating look, the less injuries there are, because you find that there's so much energy dissipated from these cars. So this looks quite nasty, but then if you actually look at it, if you look at all this, you can see the airbag's gone off, you have side bags now. The actual from here backwards, it's all right, isn't it? It's just the front. And we can actually see how this occurred. They just basically fell asleep or didn't know whether, is it this junction, is it not? Is it not? It's not. And they couldn't decide what to do, and they hit these brilliantly designed systems, which I've found saved numerous lives in those areas where people get a little bit confused and they're not really awake and they smash into this. This was at the end of our night shift, so to be honest, it was the last thing we needed. Again, very little injury. Why? Because look at this, look at the whole part of that car. It's absolutely the egg shape there. It's pretty much undamaged. This is concertina done. You see this wire here. I don't see, you can see my cursor. You can see the wire here. That is causing tension. That's stopping this from concertina, but it's designed to actually do that. So, you know, that's really, really effective way of saving lives. So when you think about when I joined, there were 4,000 road deaths every year in this country, and now there's slightly less than 2,000. I'd love to say that's because of the amazing work that police officers have done, but it's going to be about that. It's going to be education. The more cars on the road, the more drivers are there. You'd think there'd be more trouble, but dashboards are a lot more softer. Then you've got impact zones, you've got pedestrians where they hit bonnets. It's all soft now. I wouldn't recommend doing it, but it's that sort of thing. So if you look at this one, now this was a drink driver. We often find that with drink drivers, the actual drink driver themselves can walk away from this sort of stuff. You can see the front of the car here. Again, this is a non-fatal. I'm not going to show you any squeamish videos, or photographs, all right? I'm not going to be showing you too many. It's more exactly what goes on with policing when they attend these. But this is the video. You can see the engine has gone. So the centrifugal force. So this hit the tree side on, and the engine has been just ripped out and deposited further up the road. It's absolutely phenomenal. You can see this tree. It looks like it's growing out the centre of the car. So that is the centre of the car. There's the windscreen there. This is the driver's side. Okay, so if it was 1 foot further back, that would have been, and if it was a passenger, and I've been to collisions where that The tree has taken the place of the passenger, and you can imagine the mess involved there without getting too squeamish on there. This, I saw him at hospital, pretty much an outpatient. Drink driving, theory is it's because they're really relaxed and they're not tensioning up because they're drunk. This one just fell off the road. Very similar place actually to where that first very colourful one was with all the emergency services, was with all the woods. Very similar place, ironically enough. So anyway, they were sent to court and that side of things. So and got a drink drivers tend to get a standard 2-year ban and a big fine depending on how much money they earn. If they had killed that passenger, they would have probably gone to prison for a short time. So it's not always, these people. I just wanted to show you this one. I took this photo once when all the fuss had died down a little bit. It's just a good photo of the air ambulance. These are the real lifesavers. So they say about all the police, all the life saving, or what? No, we do very little of that, quite frankly. We can hopefully prevent a lot of stuff, but when these guys turn up, the paramedics, when the heli-med people come down, Nigel Lang I had on Dave and my live frontline chat podcast, that's the one. Then he's the one that is a medical guy in one of these, and I've got a story about these later on, which was phenomenal. When I witnessed what they called a thoracotomy. All right, so phenomenal people. But okay, so basically, I'm doing patrol, and I always say the best thing about a job policing. For 30 years, I didn't know what was going to happen in the next 10 minutes. All right. And it might have been nothing. It might have been the most boring shift, night shift in January. Everyone's spent their money. They're not out. January, February, and sometimes March was a bit dull because they're skint, right? They've spent money on their holidays. That's gone. They're looking forward for the future. For next summer, they've paid their deposit, they've had Christmas, they're beard out, they've run out of money. January, February, March have dark, cold, horrible evenings. So it's really that's the time when nothing can happen, and it can be really tough. So I'm just going to speak to Sean Dilly, just making sure everything's right here. Hi Harry, interesting sound phenomenon going on. You are audible, so no need to disconnect and reconnect, but your voice is at about 80-90% speed, so you can sound slower. You actually sound a bit drunk, which of course you definitely are not. It's probably something to do with the frame rate you are streaming through the software, but thought I'd mention it. Okay, does anyone else, can you just confirm to see if that is a problem, whether I am sounding a bit strange, a bit fast? Because that, if you can help me on that, that would be appreciated. Okay, and then we'll just see, I can connect that and just see, right. So I hope, thanks Sean for updating me, because it's just important that we can get this right. So say for example, we're on patrol, and then suddenly out of nowhere you will get a call, and it would be Yankee 28 from Echo Victor, maybe, Echo Victor, go ahead, and it'll be Yankee 28. We've got a 2-vehicle RTC, not fast, but you don't sound like super deep. Okay, let me just check this, guys. Let me just check my mic and integrated camera, Logitech Stream Cam. Let's go for audio. I'm just checking the settings here. Microphone that should be fine as well. Automatic adjust mic. I'm going to take that off. Mic volume, stereo audio, echo cancellation. Put that on. Okay, let's see if that makes any difference. Sounds fine to me, Eve. Thank you. It's probably because I always sound drunk with you. 99% will be the frame rate issue, not your mic. Okay, so we've got good Wi-Fi here, so that should be fine. We'll go for this. We'll just have to go for this. Thank you for that, Sean. No, a bit deeper than normal, Harry. I'm just turned rugged. Ah, that's better. Thank you, Jem. I've just turned rough and rugged. That's it. Or I've got that dreaded disease. Can you imagine? This is the night, isn't it? So, okay, so I get that. So I know that a lot of the time I was single crewed because I was a senior investigating officer of serious and fatal road traffic collisions for about 15 years. as well as armed response. So I didn't know if I was going to a firearms job or with, sounds great. This sounds good. Everyone's saying it's good. Thank you. Sean, you just saved a load of trouble for us in the future. Thank you, mate. So it's really, so in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, okay, now I'm going to be a bit busy. So yeah, Victor Yankee 28, how can I assist you? And it would be like, okay, and they'll say, yeah, Yankee 28, we've got a 2-vehicle RTC on the A30, just short of the A303. Could you make your way, please? We believe 2-vehicle. We're getting calls in that there is potentially 1 fatality and 1 serious injured. And we have other units en route. Victor, thank you. Can you just tell me who's going to be first on scene at that time? Yeah, and they'll say something like Juliet 35, be first on route. Can you give us your ETA, estimated time of arrival, Juliet 35? So that'll be a response car, often is there first and foremost. Again, usually single crewed, sometimes working alone if they're in a more rural area. And they'll be, yeah, Juliet 35, yeah, tending now, I should be there in 10 minutes. Now, you can imagine what that officer's thinking now. I'm used to it. I went to 150, 200 of these things. But that might be their very first one. And so that you can imagine what's going through their minds right now. And that's what I'm getting at. Now, there's going to be some immediate things I'm going to do. Immediate things I'm going to do is this. Now, let's have a look at this. Just going to play you a quick video. This, again, isn't anything flash, but it just gives you a rough idea. Is when these, let's see, right. Okay, so you may or may not be able to hear me. So this is sort of job. Now, before we go and do this sort of thing, I'm looking around me now just to see, right, what's the best way? I'm not going very fast here, am I? I'm just letting them peel ahead of me and move apart. There's no fast movements. I'm concerned, obviously, that if one of those will just suddenly dart across and act differently from the other ones. So I'm not doing 140 mile an hour, contrary to some tweets I might have done. But I'm also looking around me. I could be in town, I could be at the brow of a hill. And if I get that job, if I do not flick those blue lights and sirens on straight away, I look around me, I see what's around. Now, hang on, if I wait 10 seconds for these lights to clear, to go green, I can solve a whole host of complications. Because if I don't, right, blue light, siren, everyone panics, they drive through a red light, have a collision, and guess whose fault that's going to be? That's going to be mine, and quite rightly so. So it's really, it might be a question of, right, okay, I've often done that. I'm like, okay, or I might be coming up to the brow of a hill, solid white line. Where are they going to go? All right, so let's just wait until the traffic to just roll on, drive on, over the brow of the hill. Right, bang, sirens, blue light, gone. Okay, and so then that is really where we're going to go from there. Okay, this one here then, for example, is, and these are just a little things. This one I was actually passenger. So now we would be doing about 130. We're looking at the near sides. Cut traffic just to see if they panic, dart across me, whatever. It's that sort of thing. The point I'm making is you cannot think, right, I've got to get there. I've got to get there, and if I don't get there, you know, I've got to get there quick, because you then forget all the sort of the little nuts and bolts, the basic stuff, and that's where you end up causing a fatal yourself. And that is something that I wanted to get through a whole 30 years without having that on my conscience. So I always drove 5 to 10% below what I knew my capabilities were, and certainly of the car as well. Okay, so it's really imperative. But while I'm doing that, what experience can then tell you, there are basically 4 things that I'm going to do. 4 things that I can do straight away. My ETA, Victor, my ETA, I reckon it's going to be 25 minutes, 25 minutes. Thank you. Victor received, thank you. Juliet 35, what's your ETA now? Yeah, 2 minutes, going to be there for 2 minutes. Right, I'm going to say, right, Victor, can I have highways? Right, we confirmed fatal. Yes, 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 yes. Can confirm fatal. Right, there is a off-duty fire officer there, firefighter there, whatever. Can confirm fatal. Okay. Also, I want, because the reason I want highways to call, I want those diversions set up now. And what they do, they come out with a little van and they have a look at the situation, see what they need, and then they radio up and then get the crews out. And they're phenomenal crews, and they come out with the big trucks and with all the signs. And if it's at night, they need to call those crews out of their beds. And this is delay, delay, delay. And if I can call highways out at that point, or whoever's owning those roads at the time, it could be the county council or whatever, then I can release those police resources, PCSOs, members of the public. I can release them much, much earlier. Because normally what would happen then in the past, I would have gone there, I would have assessed the scene, I would have dealt with immediately. Everyone's carted off to hospital, and then we got the scene, and then I think, right, I could do with some help around here. And that's an hour or 2 hours down the line. So you can see how really important, get that early. The next thing is a bit sad because it's going to be family liaison officer. Can you call out a family liaison officer, please? All right. Again, it's so important that we get them there early, because if I was a relative of a deceased, I sort of be a bit frustrated. Well, what were they doing in 2 hours? And even more so if they are seriously injured, unlikely to survive. And you can get that mainly from if you can get that mainly from paramedics at the scene when they are there, they ain't going to make it. We're struggling here. Get that family liaison officers out. And to be honest, that's if they're dead. If they're dying, to be quite gruesome, we won't bother with a family liaison officer. Obviously, if there's one there, brilliant. Otherwise, we'll get anyone, any copper to go to knock on the front door to say, right, they've been involved in a serious collision. You need to get yourself down to the hospital because we don't think we've got too much time left. All right. And we'll get the officer to drive those people down to the hospital. And yeah, it'll probably be on blue light sometimes. That's where the humanity comes in a little bit. All right. It's really important because I don't want to faff around looking for a family liaison officer who are the most experienced, trained people to deal with this. If it means that there was an hour delay, which means the relative couldn't be at the hospital bedside holding the hand when the machine had to be switched off or when they naturally died. So you can see it's that humanity. It's putting yourself in the position of the relative to find, what would I want? How would I want this dealt with? And I don't care who's turning up on my doorstep. All right. It really is. It's to actually, it's to get the message there. Just put yourself in that position. Okay. So so the other thing would be, it's right. Juliet 35, they're at the scene. They're going to update shortly. Yeah, Juliet 35, you can see the octaves getting a little better. Yeah, I've got 2 vehicles here. One is on its side. The other, yeah, definitely fatality. I need whatever units I can get here, please. Right, getting a bit stressed. So I said, Victor, can I speak to Juliet 35, please? And I'll be like, yeah, go ahead. So Joe, you always go through the control room, so there's some sort of control over it, all right? Yeah, Juliet 35, you speaking? Yes. Okay, this is Yankee 28. I'm on my way to you. I'll be with you within 10 minutes. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for your updates. Really useful. Can you, after you've done initial life-saving situation, if that is required, can you please just get number plate, registration numbers of any vehicles that look as though they could disappear? If you have time, get mobile phone numbers and registration numbers. Forget the rest for now. It doesn't matter. You're on your own. You've got enough to deal with. It's not what I would say on the radio, but it was what I'm thinking here. What I don't want is when you get witnesses that turn up, or you're driving down the road and you get this idiot, overtake, you think, Jesus, Mildred, he's going to kill someone one day. And then you turn up and there's a massive road. Oh, look at this. There's a right traffic jam. Oh, well, you know, I wonder what happens here. I wonder if it was that guy that overtook us. Anyway, there seems to be quite a lot of people here. Look, someone's speaking to the police officer. Mildred, we'll turn around here and we'll go. All right. We've lost a phenomenal witness because they're giving our history, the history leading up to a road traffic collision. So you can see if we've got 4, 5, 6 witnesses saying, oh, my God, a yellow banana coloured 2CV, right? Drove like an absolute idiot past us, and there's a knackered 2CV. Chances are that's the one. So instead of and if the driver survives, instead of a death by due care or a due care collision, we've got a death by dangerous, right? So and dangerous is is more, dangerous is made up of, and it's either death by or it's just on its own. And it's made, due care is someone's driving fell that below of a normal proportionate driving as a normal driver would do, okay? Whereas dangerous fell far below that of a careful and competent driver. That's the wording I'm looking for. And what you can do, dangerous also could be a series of due cares. So there's another due care, another one, all right? So dangerous would be driving around a blind bend, solid white lines, not having a clue what's around there. Bang, okay? That's dangerous. It doesn't have to have a collision, of course. So then the sorts of, so I would, that's the first things I can do. But priority is first aid. Priority is the health of those people, all right, before anything. And I'm going to explain that a little bit more, because now I've turned up at the scene. Now it could be, my scene could be something like this, all right. This would be afterwards. Just move that one a bit. All right. Okay. So this is, especially if I had some way to travel, it could be something like this. Okay. Okay. So you've got vehicles, firefighting engine, firefighters or whatever. Police cars. Looks like a whole river of them, but a lot of them you might find it's just one driver in each of these cars. So it looks like the whole world's turned up. But you could have one of those could be a family liaison officer. One of those is the SIO. You've got senior investigating officer fatalities. You've got ARV there, armed response, certainly in Devon and Cornwall and other forces where they are dual rolled. And you will have, eventually you'll have a serious collisions unit. You might have a vehicle examiner there. You might have, so you can see how all this adds up. And yet you've got basically 2 officers who are looking to make sure no one's driving through the scene, sort of thing, you know? So you soon run out of resources, and I will explain to you why as well. So this was afterwards, just the last video I'll show you. Sorry. It just shows the complicated scene. You've got a vehicle down on the left-hand side, you've got the ambulance, you've got a traffic officer in the back of the ambulance. I'll tell us in a little while. I took this video as well, but it just shows the sort of busyness of that scene. And the first thing I'll do, hat, reflective. Hat is so that people can identify you, right? Traffic officer, white hat. We used to wear, it's that one there. Okay, that one there. And with our armed response, so we often just have the caps, we had the cameras on. We'll put a camera on. I remember replaying a scene that I went to previously, and oh my God, it was like a scene out of Casualty. I got out of the car and I'm walking up this road of devastation. There'd be a wheel there, there'd be a car on its side, and I could see the groups of green, all right, the medics there, lots of flashing lights everywhere. One firefighter just walked past me to get some equipment, and I go, evening, and he goes, evening, you know, and you go past again, paramedic comes running down. You right there? Yeah, good, thank you. And then you see a witness, woman, and there's this woman going, oh my God, this is terrible, this is terrible. So you've just got to very quickly assess, where's my priority? And I'm just thinking of the one here now, and then I would look to the side, and they were doing, obviously collapsed lung because they had a tube going through his elbow. They were doing some medical person will tell you exactly what it was, to basically get the air out the wrong bit of their chest and let the lungs reflate again. And unfortunately, this one was a fatality. Weird reactions from witnesses. One almost high was the passenger of a car who'd gone through this experience. And she was like, whoa, yeah, I know, you know, it's just, yeah. And they were almost hitting on that adrenaline that was going through, and you knew there was going to be a massive fall later. But the crucial thing at this point is when there's danger, right? When there's fuel, the first thing I'm doing is usually the scene has come to a grinding halt. But if I'm on the motorway and I've got lane 3 still running, I need to get that shut, especially initially. You'll probably find it will be anyway at that point, but I do not want anyone stepping back in the traffic, having been tunnel visioned onto something, seen something quite devastating, or literally watching someone die in front of them, and they step back into the traffic and get taken out. So it's that Dr. ABC, isn't it? It's danger, response, airway, breathing, circulation, catastrophic, and all this sort of business, shout and all that. So basically it's danger. Look at the first thing. What is that? Is that a gas tanker thing on its side? I've had that before. What is that? Liquid fuel. What does liquid fuel do? It rolls downhill. Where are all our cars with their red hot exhausts? They're down here. It hasn't got a leak, has it? I do hope not. So these are the sort of things, yeah, you know, you did not want one massive emergency services barbecue on that hill, which was that one I remember was Holden Hill in Devon. A very, very dodgy situation for a moment. So, and then it's at that point I'm looking at, okay, where's my access? I need more units. What do I need here? Have I got firefighter there already? Paramedics yet or not yet? And so that's the first, right, scene stable. I want to see my officer, because that officer, Juliet 35, okay, take me through it. What's the situation? Now, if you've got someone that is obviously, and I remember when I attended up very recently, and you had one very loud person in pain but shouting, which means their lungs are working, which means oxygen's getting round, and the mechanics of the collision for them, I thought they were probably going to be okay, but this one was a head injury motorcyclist, very aggressive, very erratic, compound fracture sticking through their leathers. And it was really just rip that, for me, it was rip that helmet off, because they are struggling for breath. They're that, and it was that struggling for breath. So for me then, because the armed response units are higher first aid level than your standard response units, really phenomenal, because if you shoot someone, they get a big hole in them, which you need to pack full of oxygen. And that's the basic theory of it. And it's funny enough, that's exactly the same for road traffic collisions. Okay, but then it's an issue. So if it's dangerous, firefighters, they're in charge. I'm not going to order them around. If they're driving all over my evidence, I don't care at that stage, because if they need to get that truck to get to that location to cut someone out of that car, that's the first priority. It's no good having all the evidence in the world and having an unnecessarily dead person when it comes abruptly to it. Yeah. Secondly, if someone's injured, the priority again is paramedics, not the police. All right. We've got the easy bit. We've got the hurry up and wait bit. All right. So we are containing that scene. So I'm actually coordinating it a little bit like a little orchestra with very few string instruments in there. And so I've got a PCSO, thank you. I've got a response officer, great. Can we just grab those details of those witnesses, please? It's naturally cordoned off, but Victor, can I have another unit? Can they please attend this scene via sensor, so that they can avoid most of the carnage, and they can get there a lot quicker. If they can't get through because there's an HGV across, and because the road's just jam-packed full, then we need to get the access. So access is another one, of course, isn't it? And I need to be updating the log, updating control room, because they need to know what's going on. They need to know what I need next. They need to know whether their resources are going to be free very soon, or whether they're going to actually have to get other resources from other areas. All right. So I often would work alongside Avon and Somerset. I was Devon and Cornwall, but we'd get resources in from Dorset, from Avon and Somerset, etc. And even if we were just playing a game of chess, really, where you move Cornwall units up to Devon to answer just standard calls. But my priority, contrary to popular belief, yes, life, preservation of evidence, but also to get that road open as soon as we can. All right. So we got PCS scene, and then I'm thinking, right, to be honest, I've already called Serious Collision Investigation Unit. They're the ones with the big stick that map the whole area of the thing, of the road, the layout. They look at specific bits of evidence. They work with the scenes of crime officers, who mainly take all the photographs of the scene. So there's top quality photographs of it all. But the Serious Collision Investigation Units, TFL heads, very intelligent, usually join as police officers. There are some civilians around, but not so many. They tried it, but it's not very successful. Not many civilians will be called out at any time of the night in all weathers, to then get very close and comfortable with deceased people looking very gory. So policing tends to get used to it, and they sort of get interested in this, and they do then get drawn towards that area. I find these people like God, because I will take them when they turn up, or take them to the beginning of the scene, or what I thought was the beginning of the scene, and they usually knock it back another 10 meters, because they'll have seen things that I haven't. All right. So I'll say, looks like it's coming around this bend. He's lost it slightly on his bend. Don't know why, and whatever. And they'll say, well, we can see the striation mark at this point. So he's got some sideward movement there. That will be his front offside toe. You can see where the grass has just rolled flat on that leading edge there. So we know he's hit the edge there. Then he's actually pirouetted 360, gone backwards, flipped up into the tree. You can see that broken branch up there, about 15 feet up. Right, that's the front of the car. It's then landed on its roof. I mean, this is one genuine one I'm thinking of now. And I'm thinking, how the hell did they get all that? Because all I see is a mess of tire marks. You get a little bit more used to it. I don't know why I've still got Eve up there, so I'm going to hide you now, Eve, but it was very nice. So you get a little bit used to it, But this is sort of the hurry up and wait situation because you're injured or gone to the hospital. If I've got an injured suspect, I will try to get a police officer to accompany that ambulance, usually behind the ambulance, not in the ambulance unless they're violent, because they need to have the freedom of their car. I don't want them being stranded at the hospital. As for continuity, I don't want that driver to suddenly go, oh, I don't want to know I've got cocaine in my system. I'm going to jump out the ambulance, demand they stop the ambulance, and I've lost my main suspect who has just killed someone up the road. Yeah. And guess what? They'll say in court, they'll say, oh, I panicked. And all these weak excuses that, so I put someone behind it and they will go for a hospital breath test technique. So I need to make sure if I can't get a tube in the main suspect drivers at the scene, because that solves a whole load of trouble. I often either delegate one of my officers, or frequently there weren't any other officers. I would go into the ambulance and say, right, you're the priority. If you're happy, can I breathalyze this person? All right. And then we go through the procedure. And under the Road Traffic Act, you're required to provide me with a specimen of breath. Fail to do so is an offence. Are you happy to do that? Yeah, okay. Stick a tube in them? Negative. My life has suddenly got a lot easier. Positive, that's another issue. Personally, if they're in an ambulance, I would never arrest somebody who's in an ambulance because you only end up having to de-arrest them later. I'd stick an officer there non-stop though. I will not let them out of our sight. You know, back of the car and the car behind the ambulance, fine. Get to the hospital. Get them all sorted out. Consultant, first thing with the consultant is need to get the permission of the doctor in order to be able to then get blood tests from them. The blood test is done by a police surgeon. They are not sort of police officers who suddenly did a course in surgery. They are standard GPs. They are physicians. They are, you know, they're doctors first and foremost, and they've just done some courses to learn about exhibits, forensics, that side of things. And so they take, and that goes off. If they're unconscious, so I've got someone who is unconscious in an ambulance, believe he's my suspect, or he could be my suspect. We do what we call unconscious bloods. And then again, I would get a traffic officer down there, ideally, but it doesn't have to be. And they go through the process with a big book like that, but ultimately get blood samples from them without their permission. But we only test them once we have their permission. So we keep that in a fridge until they regain consciousness. And if we need to test that sample, we then get the permission to get it examined to see how much alcohol is in there. If they refuse it, quite frankly, refusing is easy. Thank you. It's just as bad as a positive. All right. They thought of that one, funny enough. So really, really good on that side. Honestly, there are so many fireworks going off, and I think I've got some ghoul in here because everything keeps falling off the shelves. Let's see. So it's at that point, it was the hurry up and wait situation. I've got everything cordoned off, and I'm saying to the serious collisions unit, okay, what have we got? We've got two vehicles here, got a fair bit of debris, we've got a bit of body fluid there, we've got a lot of striation marks up the road. You'll be lucky if it's 6 hours. And that's from the start of the actual call coming in. So you're probably 8 hours, maybe 10. You get a whole load of other equipment, which is all GPS and all singing and dancing. But if you've got tree cover, GPS ain't going to work. You need that clear cover, clear exposure from above. And it's only going to save 2 hours, not 6. So it's good. It's about 60 grand, which the money's not the problem, but it's not the be all and end all. That's why you can't just rely on that. Kath Fisher's joined us. Brilliant police helicopter observer. Sometimes you have the police helicopter too, looking for ejectees, photos and evidence. Exactly that. And frequently I'd have a road traffic collision where shoes would go missing of a motorcyclist. And we found them over the hedge in the field, just for the forces involved. The serious collisions unit, you can't have like 5 there. First of all, there aren't 5 to cover the whole force 24 hours a day. It's really specialist unit system. And they will get on their hands and knees literally, and they will look at every little piece of evidence. But they have to know that the last bit of evidence is potentially linked with the first bit. So you can't really have 5 people doing it because they then map what they think is relevant get back to the station, put a big plan together that then reflects exactly what the scene was, but on a computer. And then number 3 says to number 1, oh my God, is that to do with that? Oh, I wish we could have had another look with that. So it's much better to have the one person go through the whole lot. And they will be able to tell us basically what's potentially how it happened. All right. So police helicopter used, we're brilliant because sometimes we've got a car and it's just turned up and we're thinking, well, okay, we've got one deceased driver, but was there an injured, or was there an injured passenger? So we'll get a dog unit out perhaps, and we'll get the helicopter out just to check the area and make sure someone hasn't been injured and they've wandered off and then they've collapsed. Because if they're leaking blood inside them, they're going to collapse sometime. And you do not want to find them 4 days later in a hedge. That would be a bad thing. Sentient Android. Thank you. Hi, Harry. Going through my application to DC at the moment. Your videos have been really useful. Good. Well, welcome to all this sort of thing. So you can't beat it. DNC especially. It's absolutely fantastic force. Couldn't say anything about it. Bad about it. So, okay, so we've got that hurry up and wait situation, but that's when really trying to get those cars turned around and back again. HGVs can't necessarily turn around, so they're used to it. They get the kettle on, go in the back of the cab, have a few have a bit of sleep. So they're quite well prepared. Everything else we do try to get to turn around, and also we have like a media strategy straight away, right early on, is because once I'm at the scene, I say, right, can you just let media know this road is not going to be open for quite some time, okay? And so they'll use, and this is where forces use social media, because if they put a tweet out, all these press people are going to be watching the forces tweet, and they then put it out. So that's why Twitter is so blooming good, I'll tell you. So, it's just getting the media involved straight away, getting that social media out, just so important. And then have I got enough resources? We can see I've lost a resource with the ambulance straight away, okay? And because I didn't have a specialist traffic unit with them all the time, and I need them to go to the hospital perhaps, I can't get them back until they've done that, for example. It might be the question that I've got some witnesses that are distraught. I could have some children that they've got nowhere to go right now, So I'm looking around. Apart from absolutely containing the whole scene, so I don't have someone driving through going, "Oh, what's this about?" Because if they drive over my light bulbs, what's this motorcyclist into the side of a car coming out side entrance, motorcycle, bang, went into me, bit like that tree photo I showed you. It went in half a meter, measured it into the car. So. Serious collisions unit with a vehicle examiner later or whatever, you can actually find the bulbs. If it's broken, it'll be oxidized if it was switched on. All right. If the bulb isn't broken, the centrifugal force bows it forwards. So it goes bang and the bulb bows forward. So the front filament, if it's not broken, will bow forward. The back light will bow forward if it was switched on, because it's white hot. It's really, really flexible, really easy to bend. So that's why, so we can get those bulbs. So that's why ideally we don't want firefighters' feet stamping around. What did I say though? If it's dangerous, doesn't matter. Get them there. If I lose my bulbs, so what? They need to get that equipment into the car to cut them out. All right. It's afterwards when firefighters, they'll have their debrief and they'll turn around in the corner just to assess it, see what they could have improved on, what difficulties did they have, how did they get around it. They do this on each and every one. It's really, really good to see. And as that point, I say, gents, can I just ask you to just either leave this bit clear, because this has got then you've just parked your firefighting truck on where it's mounted, that version, not a problem, but could I just ask you to, when you reverse it back that way, not forward and across, that side of things. And they're always brilliant at that. It's always how you ask them, of course, isn't it? Katrina, also helpful if a child babysitting the car, only use rear notice of child in car when there's actually one in the car, and saves wasting first on scene searching for possible child babies thrown from cars. Very interesting point. I've never really considered that. It's very true. Kathy is called regularly, police helicopter observer. You've got private pilot's license, and you arrange aerobatics as well. She's lifeboat. She's Superwoman. I told her she's Superwoman. She says, no, I'm just normal. No, she's Superwoman. Where the driver's made off usually ends up being a drink driver, and they run it. So many drink drivers that run off. Okay, so we don't just go for drink now, we go for drugs. How many times? Blimey, it was almost 1 in 2 would have had previous cocaine in their system. It was getting, if these cars that were crashing, even a little knock, if they have a little collision, bang, whatever. If they were showing a couple little signs, and even knock, there you go, there's a swab, positive, cocaine, cannabis, banned. It's like you're drink driving, All your neighbours think you're the devil itself incarnated. It's just drink driving is sort of on par with paedophilia almost. It's just like, oh, you're disgrace, but so many people do it. They socially use cocaine, whatever, and we were picking them off left, right, and centre. And they stupidly think their driving isn't affected by it. It's totally impaired. So obviously, if the main suspect's dead and it's a single person, the unofficial term, they used to call that an own goal. Okay, so they did it themselves. They did it. They call that dark humor or whatever, but it's not even humor. They're just saying it's an own goal. It's not the official term, believe me. But that side of things, a lot of the time we didn't know how a car had crashed. Did they have the heart attack because of the collision, or did they have a heart attack and then crash? It's really important to know that. And that's why sometimes we would do the basic investigation when we pretty much knew they'd had a heart attack, because the collision investigator would say, well, we could tell ourselves, to be honest, there was it just driving along, and then it's like they fell asleep. Now, did they fall asleep? But then they rolled into a ditch, very little damage to the car, and they were dead. So we'll wait until Monday morning for the post-mortem, and there's a big clot in the middle of their heart or in their head. And that will be the end of that. It would be a coroner's inquest for that one side of things. Suspect, do I arrest them? So you've always said if they're already injured, they're in the ambulance, they're going to be in hospital, I don't personally arrest them. It saves a whole load of trouble. If they decide they're going to leave, I'm going to arrest them. But if they are in the custody of the hospital, you can't go into a hospital and arrest someone and take them out. All right, that's just unlawful. Can't do that. Again, first aid is priority, isn't it? All right. And then, but if they're at the scene, sometimes, you just get like some guy like your dad or your neighbor, and you think, oh, God, it'd feel terrible to arrest this guy. But because they just look normal people, we only arrest criminals. Well, what have they actually done? Is there evidence we need to really collect here? And say negative breath test. So sometimes a collision, it was just a bad set of circumstances. They reacted badly to something, but you can see what's happened. No, there's no point in arresting someone for that. But if someone's done 4 very bad overtake, or just 1 really bad overtake, and someone's been killed, they're going to be arrested, okay? Get them to the station. Again, somebody is going to have to take them there. And you think we probably have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 police officers turn out of these fatals. Sometimes it's 3, So you can see it's really, logistically, it's a nightmare of how to deal with this, with not losing witnesses, dealing with suspects, dealing with injured we need to breathalyze and do blood procedures from. And those blood procedures will then go off and come back literally 4 weeks later. And it'll tell us whether they've got drugs or alcohol, all right? So you can see if they're at the scene, they get arrested, they'll do an interview. It used to be a very quick interview. And it was basically because we needed to know whether it was mechanical failure, whether it was a road structure issue, whether it was weather, where are we talking suicidal here? Were they suicidal? It was potentially murder, quite frankly. Is someone done something to their brakes and they're driving down the road knowing they'd be driving down there, and they've gone head on. So we need to get an initial account. We can't just bail them for 4 weeks and then they say to us, somebody said he was going to cut my brakes, and the car's a cube now, so that's why we do that side of things. And so we just need a witness strategy. Who are we going to take statements from? We might need negative statements, just like 4 or 5 on a coach. I didn't see anything here. You couldn't see anything from where I was. And if you dot those around the coach, and they say which seat they're in, that shows a pattern as, right, okay, if they haven't seen it between those points, we can assume the ones in the middle haven't seen it. But we speak to everyone. It's just like painting the picture for the court later on. So if we haven't got any live suspects, it's a coroner's court, yeah? So then there's an inquest court, for an inquest. And that can happen, and it's a really good place for the families of the deceased to actually find out what the hell happened, get the witnesses in there, get police officers, and because Her Majesty the Queen wants to know what the bloody well happened to one of her citizens and why they died. And that is what the coroner's officer, the judge, is there for. And he is higher, the coroner is higher in status than a Crown Court judge. All right? Massive. They've got a lot of power. So it won't go there unless someone else has died in there. There'll be an inquest, but there will also be a criminal case, or certainly the evidence will go up for CPS to decide whether there's enough evidence to have a reasonable possibility of a prosecution. And I went to one where 6-year-old child was killed. Devastating situation where the guy who did it was driving, was just about to turn right, couldn't see through the door mirror that was broken. Didn't do a proper shoulder check, and a car was overtaking him at the time. I think he just stopped, and it crashed inside of the car, and the guy banged his head, and that dazzled him a little bit, and he put his foot on the brake, or what he thought was the brake. It was the accelerator, and he went wow into this car park, full acceleration through a crowded car park, hit a 6-year-old child, knocked them 11 meters, drove over the 6-year-old child. Devastating. And when I turned up, one of my armed response guys is doing CPR on this little lad, and that was the one when my lad was 6 years old, and the family liaison officers was, and the ARV doing CPR, his nephew was. It was just a nightmare situation. But in those situations, then I would go to, as a senior investigating officer, I've got my vehicles, I've got my witnesses. Some witnesses you'd want achieving best evidence, so it means you give them to specialist interview people. It's nice, like little lounge, especially for younger people or people who are a little bit vulnerable, learning difficulties, and are very trained in not being too led with their questions. So instead of saying, "Well, how fast was the car doing then?" I'm presuming that they would say, "So what sort of speed do you think the car would have been doing at that point?" It's really not leading them into a question. And this is filmed and it's audio and all this sort of thing, so they can play it in the court again. But and of course, then I went to the forensic post-mortem. I found the scene a lot more upsetting than the post-mortem, because the post-mortem was very much, there was just so. I was so proud of the staff there who deal with death and bodies all the time, and getting down to it, they're cutting people up and taking the insides out, and then measuring and weighing and this, that, and the other, and coming to the things. And that's where I saw a clot in someone's heart that killed someone. And they were so gentle with this child. It was like he was alive, asleep. So gentle and respectful. It was absolutely phenomenal to see that. I was in North Devon. And the scene was where the old, that's where you need to have, I need to get a grip here. I had witnesses everywhere, young witnesses, and lots of young people. And I had limited officers. One officer was doing CPR. It was just carnage, quite frankly. And the person who'd crashed into the original one had disappeared because it was only a road. Sorry, the one who'd passed. There was a car that had passed at the time. Correct myself, not involved in the collision. They just disappeared, thinking, "Oh, small collision, nothing to worry about." Didn't notice that the car then sped off again and had the collision. And it was I did an interview on the BBC to get this witness, and we actually found them, which was really, really useful, because they were able to say that they were the ones that were just parked behind the first car, hiding its indicator. So yeah, it must have been hiding, And so when he turned right, I went on, and there was a collision behind me, but it wasn't very fast, Devastating. So he was just an ordinary bloke, that driver, just an ordinary guy. And it's just a reminder to us all, I think, is when you're driving your cars and you're taking your family to, some fun day outs or whatever, because he didn't fix his mirror and he didn't do a shoulder check. He has to live with the fact that he killed a 6-year-old child. Not entirely his fault. reflexes. Now that went to court, and there's a lot of discussion. You'd ask 5 different people that, and they'd have 5 different answers. Some would say, yeah, you know, you should be more careful on that. It wasn't a popular one, to be honest. Most of it was, oh my God, there for the grace of God go we, you know, that after the, yeah, if he'd got his wind mirror fixed, but ultimately, if you banged your head and your brain is telling you you're putting your foot on the brake, you know, whose fault is it? He's panicked. It wouldn't stop. It wouldn't stop. So the prosecution gave their point, and at that point, the defense said, look, judge, if you're happy, we think, if that's the prosecution's case, we're happy to leave it there unless you want us to give our defense. And the prosecution said, no, we're happy for you to make a decision on that, whether to go on for the full defense to come in. I don't know what they call it, but it was actually quite good because the family, again, could see exactly the effort, work had been put into that case. Massive amount of work, files like that, expert witnesses giving their evidence on that. They knew exactly what had gone on, why it happened. And in a way, maybe they realized that it wasn't just the enemy that had done it, you know, that it wasn't the devil that had done it. And they seemed to be quite happy with that. And it didn't go any further, you know. So that's forensic postmortems, is if you have someone who is, if you've got any death where your suspect is alive, okay? And that used to be a tricky one because they then have a right to have their own postmortem so that they could check the evidence that the Home Office forensic pathologist, an immensely skilled, trained person, so not just a pathologist who can tell you why they died, forensic postmortem can tell you how they died. It's the sort of difference, all right? And so they're able to say that stripe across the chest will be from the seatbelt. If you don't put your seatbelt across your chest, you only have it like a lap belt. I've seen the injuries to your liver, which just slice through it like a blade. With enough force forward, it will slice through that liver, and I've seen that in a postmortem slab. So don't do it. Seatbelt across there and the bottom as they're designed. So they're phenomenal, but it means that the defense have allowed to do that. And they don't get given, I don't think it's changed, but they don't get given a really specific time to do that. And I would be chasing up, because how dare you've got some little oik through his bad driving, drink driving, drug driving, or whatever, has killed your daughter driving to work, minding her own business in another car. And he decides when he thinks he's going to go for, yeah, okay, I'll get another post-mortem done. So with their defense. And I would often speak to their defense and say, guys, this is inhumane. You need to buck him up a bit and get this done. Otherwise, I'm going to kick off about this. And there's very little I could have done about it. But and they would be, yeah, we are telling him to get in, and that's the thing that's sort of wrong at the moment. Now, maybe someone will be screaming at me saying, Harry, that's just changed, but I don't think so. It was something that was a real problem that we had. And hopefully that will change. But it was usually, to be honest, you'd speak to the defendants, the defendants' barrister, legal side, and say, guys, can we do this? We'd like to release the body to the family so that they can bury their daughter. All right. We'll phone on Tuesday to see if it's been, you've got the answer, okay? And it was usually very respectful, to be honest. So it was no problems with that. So that's the side of things. Vehicle examiner, we don't normally bring them to the scene. So I've got this carnage and I've got a car, and I'll be blunt with you guys. I might have a body in the car that is so, you know, if you get a body and then crunch a car up around it, you're not going to get it out until you've cut the car apart. And if you cut the car apart, you'll take out your brake lines, your steering racks, which will tell you whether the car was mechanically sound before the collision. All right. So the vehicle examiner will go off and they'll do bench tests and things like this, and the hydraulics. That's why we tend to look at the tire pressures immediately we get there, as soon as we can, really, because if they go down during that, we don't know whether they were down at the time of the collision or since. All right. So it's really interesting things like that we need to get going. We need to get sorted. So if we can say, yeah, the tires were these pressures at this time, right? Job done. They can cancel that bit out. It wasn't a deflated tire that caused this, or, you know, he's been driving around on a tire that's only a quarter of the of the inflation it should have been, you know, that sort of thing. So it's really helping the defence as well on that. So vehicle examiner, again, real TFL heads, really clever people, highly trained. And they will look at, I remember they found a brake drum and they found a screw that was loose in there that had got caught in the bit that prevented the car from braking to the point when it should have done. That was a few years back now. They saw the motorbike and they saw a little nut that was missing on the bike, which was the cause of that going around the bend. Wheel basically collapsed into the center arm co, killed. And then the bike had just been MOT'd again. So you could see that must have been a tricky conversation with them. So you've got potential offences there, of course. So these are sort of things. They're huge investigations. They take the while, you know, and then, but it's really, so that's post-mortem. That's later, of course. Then you've got the interview of the suspect themselves. So if you've done an initial interview on the day, but then you would go back and once you've got your witness statements together, you've got your forensic post-mortem together, you've got, you know, you've got your vehicle examination stuff come, you've serious collisions unit. They might not have their final report, but you've certainly seen them and you've got a preliminary thing. Then you can interview your suspect again. And you've got the bloods back, you know, to show whether they were positive or not. And that's where you get your charges. That's where you get whether they were charged for that or something else, or if you don't charge at all because you realised actually it's not a realistic part of prosecution. If I've got 4 people in a car and each one of them says wasn't me who was driving, then I would arrest all 4 people because they could have swapped positions, and I would breathalyze all 4 people, and if they were in hospital I would do blood tests on all 4 people, and we'd sort it out at the end. We'd sort out the mess to see if later on with CCTV you could actually identify the clothing of that person, or indeed, again, you could show with the records where the bruising was on the chest, so whether the driver's side, passenger side, and that side of things. All right, so it's really lots of things you can go on to actually paint the picture, and that, of course, is statements is really important as well, because you know what, we want to know what the temperature is, you know what the road surface was like, you know, was the music loud, what was the atmosphere in the car? You know, was the heating on? How long? When did they last sleep? Okay, they might have just had 5 hours sleep last night, but what about the previous 2 nights? Did they just have 5 hours sleep the previous 2 nights as well? You know, and it was something through this that I think through the services we lost. I think it was 6 people in one collision. People, Royal Marines, I think it was, or in the Navy, that had been on exercise and wanted to get back up to Scotland and started off, and of course, all the passengers were asleep and then the driver fell asleep and that was the end. So that's why the military is so heavily involved now in learn to live type stuff and all that sort of thing, to make sure people are aware of it, and they will not allow people to leave now on the day of the exercise. To be honest, if you've got hit and runs, so if say your driver's gone away, then you can bring in CID, MSIT, major crime investigation team, that is, and that is fantastic. Sort of the bigger the job, the more simpler it is, because there's a lot more delegation involved, and so you can give it to a whole department or say, right, leave that to us. Interviewing strategy, great, we'll do that. You know, I used to interview someone and then there would be people listening in the interview room next door, all wired in listening, and we'd stop the interview and then I'd come back and we'd have a little chat. Well, you mentioned that, so let's bring him to this now and speak about this and whatever, you know. So it's a really useful way of getting best evidence on that as well. Evening, Debbie, thank you. Exactly, there's some really good things coming through at the moment. We're going into about a nice hour, really. So the important thing is at the end of the scene, you can see there's a scene situation which you then leave once you've collected all your evidence. But then I want to know, Juliet 35. Quick chat with him. How are you, my friend? Oh yeah, no, it's all right. You know, I've been to one before and it's quite cool at the moment. I've got my wife at home. We'll have a chat, and I've got a really great sergeant, and I'm just gonna, you know, and fantastic. So I'll just speak to your sergeant, get him to, and any you know, and then you might get the opposite where they've gone home already, because a lot of these times you get dragged out to little areas, and then hours and hours have gone by. You're way past when you should have gone off duty. Juliet 35's gone home. Okay, contact the sergeant. Does he live alone? How is he? Can you just check the next day? And it might be the fact that it'd be the next day, it was the email goes in straight away to say, can you just contact me regarding Juliet 35 and do that side of things. That's the best way. We have more formal situations where people are really struggling. Because remember, people have got the domestic sides as well. They could be going through a divorce or whatever. This could be the last thing they've needed. They're now getting flashbacks. They don't work with anyone because they work in solitude quite a lot of the time. And that's where welfare becomes an issue. And I wanted to show you something here because this person here, Gemma Fox, she works in the City of London Police and she is the regional rep for roads policing. And it is Roads Policing Welfare Month. And I used to get really, really concerned for traffic officers because on response, I worked alone, but I was with my section and I would, we'd have a good chat and we'd go out quite a lot together. Traffic officers more and more are single crewed and they often are the only ones on shift that day. And they deal with family liaison stuff, horrendous stuff, because when the units had to be, when the police forces everywhere had to sell off the family silver, all the police stations and stuff, then they had to start getting rid of police officers. When they retired, they weren't replaced. That's where you lost your 20,000 officers, but you lost a whole load of infrastructure as well. So the first people that went were traffic officers, because with our force, ARVs could do traffic as well. But you can see now why when they're starting replacing them a little bit more as well, which is getting that way now. But traffic officers, I'm really severely worried about their mental health over a long period of time. Amazing people. Ollie Taylor is one, a very good friend of mine, bike cop in Devon and Cornwall, phenomenal senior investigating officer, what he hasn't seen. I sort of started and then he took on and obviously he's carrying on now. It's just so important. So Gemma has got so many things going on this month that people can really talk to their peers in different forces, and it's a really good welfare thing. It's not just a two-dimensional effort. She's done really well on that. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to have a quick look through the comments, just see if there's anything more. So welfare is the number one thing. Okay, it's none of it. You haven't got this atmosphere of pull yourself together. That's gone. Okay, and what I would do very much in this section is bring it in the conversation, and say, oh, Chris, thanks for your efforts yesterday, mate. You went to that, you spoke to that witness and whatever. What do you do after that then? Were you, oh, well, I went to so and then I searched the body because the FLO was looking at the other guy, and so I searched for ID on the other. That's a messy one, wasn't it, Chris? And they were, yeah, it was a bit, but and it's drawing it out rather than saying, right, we're diffusing today. There's a bourbon and a cup of tea. Let's go for it, eh? Tick that box, And that's the best thing about an armed response unit is you were like a public order unit, and if you've got a traffic section, lucky enough to have, it's wonderful with that. Katrina, thank you. Wonderful insight for all. Thank you, Harry Tangye. Great to hear more from your side. My son-in-law is a firefighter and so interested to hear both sides. I'll be playing this to him. Thank goodness I didn't slag firefighters off. They're heroes in boots. But those paramedics, phenomenal, turned up, single crewed at scene. I knew that I was going to be the first one there. In my mind, I'm already thinking, I know where I'm going to put the car. I've got two serious injured. First aid kit. I knew where it was. It's in the same place. And big scissors, cut all his leathers off this biker. I knew if he survived, he was going to be very angry with me. And compound fracture, writhing around all over the place. Got the oxygen on, but it was when the paramedics turned up, and it was quite nice to go, ta-da, because the guy was naked apart from his boxer shorts, which makes their life much quicker. They can assess him much quicker. Helmet was off because I'd established that he was choking. He needed oxygen in him. And there was less likelihood of a spinal injury with him on that than dying of lack of oxygen, quite frankly. We ended up shoving him on a stretcher. Excuse me for my dry cough. I hope it's just that. I've always had it for my whole life. So let's hope it's not the other one. The air ambulance was there, landed on a postage stamp like that. But the HEMS doctor went, Taken to under the bridge. It started to rain. Went under the bridge of the motorway of the M5. And he then gets a pair of scissors and he cuts across from nipple to nipple. He cuts through the, excuse me if you're a bit squeamish, the sternum with a wire saw, and then opens the chest up. They're being intubated, so that means that solid thing that goes in. He's unconscious. He's hemorrhaging like mad from somewhere, and he needs to know why, because he ain't going to make the air ambulance, let alone the hospital. The nurse then, who was with him from the air ambulance, was massaging the heart with her hand. The lungs were being lifted out of the place to look for the hemorrhaging, and I was holding the torch. And it's when you see that that you think, holy poo, these are incredible people. And I just remember him looking around and going, oh, there's another. I'm sorry, guys. We're going to call this. It's not, it was ripped to pieces in there, bless him. So that was an absolute tragedy. But you can't save them all. But I've got to say, if they're usually 99 times 100, if they are still just a little bit alive at the scene, it's phenomenal how many of them survive. Pretty much all of them. Really is amazing. But they can take a long time to recover, of course. And that's why seatbelt tickets are given out, because I'd rather you're an outpatient than spending all my taxpayers' money whilst you're in, 6 weeks in intensive care. Thank you, everyone. Contact me anytime. Please, if you would, subscribe to me on this YouTube channel if you're on YouTube. Thank you for joining me for anything else. I'm sure there's loads of stuff I've probably mistaken, that not put in there. I will be very cheeky and say a lot of my stuff that I have, stories, accounts, and whatever it is on here. So that's Farms and Fatals, probably a good little Christmas present for someone. But first, if you could subscribe on the channel, and your bottom right it will be, hey, subscribe there, and I'll do something else. So I'm doing armed response, Farms and Fatal as it is. So all the guns, all the traffic stuff, which involves all the pursuits. There is a pursuit one on my channel already, Harry Tangye. Take a look at that and let us know what else you want. Thank you very much indeed. One of his first jobs was to an accident. Police car on blue lights, an articulated lorry which was doing a 3-point turn in fog. Ouch! Saved the officer's life. Katrina, you should be very proud indeed. It's nice to know, as I say, you don't know what you're going to be doing for the next 10 minutes for the rest of your career. So I still recommend it. Thank you, everyone. And I'm going to do a really good professional. It's difficult when you're doing it on your own, especially as I'm a guy and I can't multitask. All right. But I'm going to shove this on again and I'm going to see what happens. Cheerio.